Thelma and Louise is not only a film but also a cultural event. When it was released in 1991, it sparked a double storm of controversy and praise. At its core, its presentation will argue that Thelma and Louise is a pivotal feminist text that powerfully subverts the patriarchal conventions of classical Hollywood. However, its specific brand of empowerment, rooted in adopting traditional masculine trends, highlight a traditional and at times controversial moments in feminist filmmaking. By integrating 7 core academic perspectives, we will dissect how this work became a relevant declaration of film history, how it became an imperfect yet dispensable step in its era, and how it became a milestone that had proved its historical significance due to the polarized reactions it still provokes to these days. To understand the object of Thelma and Louise Rebellion, we must first review Lauren Movie Foundation paper, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema from 1975. Movie pointed out that mainstream films are constructed around the male gaze, in which women are both the passive objects of desire for male character on the screen and the passive barriers of the male gaze in the audience. Men, as the active actors of the gaze, drive the narrative forward. In the initial stage, Thelma was in the kitchen and Louise was in the waitress uniform, both trapped within this framework. Their existence was defined by their relationship with men and their openness to family or profession. The film begins by establishing the patriarchal world described by movie and then systematically deconstructed. The brilliance of Thelma and Louise lies in its master of rebellion. As Marsha Kingdon explained in her article, Thelma and Louise and the Master as Feminist Road Movies. The film doesn't invent a new genre, it hijacked a co-intentionally male one. The road movie, a symbol of masculine freedom from domestic responsibility, is here climbed by 2 women. Kingdon notes that their destination, the Mexican border, and their final standoff are pulled directly from the Western, but by making their grand suicidal leap into their great virginal wonder of the world, the grand, they perform what kinda calls a sex change on Western mythology. Unlike the grim, powerless heroes of European feminist films like Macedo, Thelma and Louise are empowered, energetic, and glamorous. They aren't just victims of patriarchal, they become physical outlaws who bet the system at its own game, making the film feminist message both accessible and politically effective for its time. Now, this transformation from a passive object to an active hero isn't just a feel we get from watching the film. It's written directly into the script, in what they called a turning talk exercise. Researcher Haisha Yang and Yuten Lu actually provide linguistic proof of this change. They did this by analyzing the dialogue to see who was controlling the conversation. At the beginning of the film, Thelma is totally passive. She asks for permission, she speaks very little, and her husband demonstrate their talks. But after the robbery, everything changed. In the final screen, Yang and Lu shows that Thelma initially 50 out of the 70 conversation topics, taking complete control of their shared destiny. When she's the one who yelled, "Let's keep going," it marked her final transformation. She's no longer a woman who needs permission to leave home. She's a woman deciding her own pace. The data shows this change is real and measurable. However, not all feminism interpretations view this transformation as a reserved victory. In their analytic critical, G.A. Cody and W.G. Swift argue that the film ultimately fails as a truly alternative feminist cinema. The core argument is that Thelma and Louise gained their freedom not by creating new feminist identities, but by adopting the male trait. They were falling from violence, dominance, and rejection of relationship. The image of Thelma being re-emerged as a robot is a concrete interpretation of the male personality of her lover. Cody and Swift see this as an identification with the aggressor, a physiological defiance where the victimized become a victimizer to feel powerful. In this view, the film is not as essential of family difference, but a dying of sexual difference, inadvertently reinforcing the patriarchal idea that to be powerful is to be masculine. It's form of what they call pseudo independence, a rebellion that is ultimately still defined by the patriarchal order it opposes. So is it feel a power imitation of masculinity or a powerful declaration of feminism? The answer might lie not only in the text itself, but also in acceptance process. Brandon Cooper's audience study, the relevance and gender identity in spectators' interpretation of Thelma and Louise, provides crucial insight. Cooper found that male and female audience watched two different films. For male audience, the plot of the film is highly consistent with the experience of gender discrimination and marginalization they have personally experienced. They identified with the character friendship and their struggle interpreting their violent actions as a cathartic revenge fantasy and a symbolic fight for freedom. For them, the critical that they were acting like men was irrelevant. What matters was that they were acting at all. In contrast, most male spectators for whom sex was not a relevant daily concern failed to see the symbolic layer. They interpreted the film literally as unfair male bashing and a story filled with pathetic stereotype of men. This polarized acceptance response highlights the true power of the film. It touches up the radical reality of women's lives so precisely that an inconceivable gap is formed at the level of interpretation based on gender identity. All in all, Thelma and Louise is a complex and landmark film. As Kinder argued, it completely shorted the movie male gauge by corrupting the male-dominated genre of film. Young and Lu research indicates that the narrative logic of film empowerment in the film is precisely supported at the textual level through the characters' dialogues themselves. However, as Cody and Swift have pointed out, her feminist stance is a product of the times, a noisy, overt, and confrontation rebellion that essentially still relies on male behavioral norms. This stands in contrast to the more logically nuanced feminist media that would follow, such as the turn to interiority in post-feminist television described by Tasha, or the self-aware, cringing aesthetics analyzed by Havas and Suleiman, which explore film subjective from the inside out. Ultimately, the polarized reviews recorded by Cooper precisely confer the significance of the film. Thelma and Louise has become a milestone not because it provided the ultimate perfect answer for feminist films, but because it completely tore open the path of patriarchal. That iconic ultimate limp was a stubborn rejection of the return to the old world, opening space for all subsequent distinctive feminist journey both on and off the screen.